Hi, welcome to the Santa Cruz Software Labs podcast. Today we'll be discussing creative content, digital asset management, and the AI tipping point. Um, we'll get into some details on this, kind of identifying what a tipping point actually is, if there are multiple tipping points, what that means given a certain context. And to help me out, we've actually invited Joe Atwood, who's an expert in image retouching, asset management, and creative workflows. Joe's been in the industry for a number of years, so he's been a champion of new technology and change management. But welcome to Joe Atwood.
Thanks, Lewis. Appreciate it. Nice to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Joe, if you could take a couple of minutes, it'd be great to kind of get a history out to everybody so they understand kind of where you're coming from and what you've done in the past and just, a little bit of a bio, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. I would say I started I got into Photoshop because I was a creative guy, and my mom started a graphic design business, marketing. So she got Photoshop, and I'm going to age myself here, but she got Photoshop 2.0, which came out in 91. And, I just started, working on photographs of family members. We had a scanner, and I just started working on, cleaning those up. Um, yeah, I'm not going to get into the whole how I got here, but, one of the things that I did, my first job was I brought something a picture of my dad that was awfully destroyed, and I just brought it into a place called it was a Take Two in Arlington, Massachusetts. It was the first all digital photo retouching studio that was in the Northeast, and they hired me on the spot. I showed them what I did, and they hired me on the spot, and I just wanted to know if it was any good. So, so that was good. So that started the career in post production. So then, I've just been at it for a long time. I would say my asset management part of it started when I started at Staples in 2004. I would say that was my first uh, experience into that realm. And then I became their asset manager, and I ran their post production Photoshop people there. And now I'm at Vistaprint.
Awesome. That's quite a leap.
Yeah.
So to go from like a small place to essentially the big corporate company, I'd imagine the workflows were vastly different, or they evolved quite a bit between what you were doing and what you eventually came to do there.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I skipped over a couple of jobs. One of the bigger jobs that I did for I think 3 years was I worked at a place called Image Technology, and that was in Salem, Mass. And they were the first all digital photo studio
Oh,
uh,
cool.
that that I knew of, and I was told it was in New England, but I have no idea. Um, and so that was like the first, we stored images, and we worked on them, but there was no dam. It was just working out of folders like everybody did at that time. It was about 1995ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
At what point did you start to kind of consider yourself like an imaging specialist? Was it when layers got introduced? Was it when, like, at what point do you think you started to get a handle really on kind of the trade as as someone who's mastered image manipulation for the purpose of, whatever marketing, creative initiatives?
Yeah, I would say probably that Image Technology place,
Okay.
because I was really getting my chops then. I think we did catalogs for a local retailer that is no longer in business, um, and that's all. That was our only client. We just worked on
Mhm.
it was like flyers that you'd get in the Sunday mail at that point. So it was like they sold everything. It was much like a Target of now. They sold everything from bikes to clothing to pharmaceutical goods and all that stuff. So I got a good breadth of products to work on at that point, and I was just doing their cleanup and silhouetting and stuff like that. That's all I was doing for them. But I got really proficient at it, especially pathing and silhouetting and stuff like that at that point. Yeah.
So the image processing workflow at that point was pretty basic. So was it at
Yes.
Staples where you really had to kind of flush out techniques? Because I'd imagine volume and scale, which is obviously a big deal nowadays, really becomes kind of like the measuring stick of like efficiency and throughput and productivity. So was it at Staples where you really got to got to really kind of put your skills to the test and really kind of grow in your abilities?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was at Staples where speed was everything, right? So it was, when I first got in there, they expected me to do X amount of images a day, and and luckily I was good enough to be able to do that and exceed it. So um, that was mainly that was where speed came into play. They had a really small image. They only had three people in the imaging department at that time, and then it went down to two, and then it slowly built back up.
And what kind of volume are you talking about with like three people? I mean, that's like, I don't know, annually, monthly. What are you looking at? What were you looking at? Do you remember?
I don't know annually. I think within the I was expected to. I can tell you what I was expected to do per day, right? So I think the average was about 100 images a day, and that was like with silhouetting, color correction, you know, blemish removal, all that stuff. Maybe changing some colors here and there, maybe changing a pattern on clothing. Or no, it wasn't clothing, but on chairs at that point.
Okay.
So it like that stuff. It probably averaged around 100, but if on a good day,
That's
if
still a
I'm
good
just
number.
silhouetting, I could do about 200.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of volume actually. So those at that point there was no AI. There was nothing remotely close to AI, right? I think at that
No,
point, at best, some level of automation may have existed or kind of come to fruition. At that point, I think plugins were probably a big thing for image manipulation and effects and things, but
well,
probably not
plugins.
anything that was helping you on the day to day, right?
No, not like that. I mean, plugins. Of course, we worked with action scripts. I mean, action scripts were everything, right? So
Hmm.
you try to automate just repeatable steps as much as you could at that point. Like, even if it was just like a save as into a specific folder, that was a one key command if you set it up right, or if you had multiple actions, like size one image down to 13 different derivatives, right? And you'd start at the largest and just keep on going down. We did that. So we definitely did that at Staples. So we had 13 different derivatives, I believe, for every single image.
Which is interesting because that technology now, well, not that technology, but that setup now would be seen as something as like really foreign and almost more expensive and inefficient, right? But
Yeah.
back in the day, there weren't really alternative methods of achieving the same thing. So it was probably a quicker way to execute content. Interesting.
Yeah, correct. That was your choice. That was what you had.
Well, another thing to consider is with that many assets in this day and age, that'd be really efficient from a dam standpoint too, right? Because you could conceivably have to also duplicate metadata or create some kind of relationship between those two.
Yep.
So I'm hearing a lot of volume, and a lot of volume with a lot of work usually means a lot of redundancy, especially if we're talking about silhouetting, if we're talking about image recomposition. So AI must be fresh on your mind relative to what you've done in the past, relative to what you're looking to do in the future.
Oh
Are,
yeah.
are any of those kind of hitting a sour note, or are they hitting like a positive note, where is some like light at the end of the tunnel in terms of like removing some repetitive tasks, some like
I'd say from sorry to cut you off, Luke.
not good.
I would say from a image retouching standpoint,
Mhm.
all of the new AI that's integrated with Photoshop now, and they just like integrated Nano Banana and you know, in addition to Firefly to Photoshop, I would say all of that stuff has really helped retouching immensely. It's like if you I can select my face and say take off remove glasses. I mean, if you had to do that in using the stamp tool, it would take you hours. And it takes now like a minute, 2 minutes, maybe you got to refine it with some words. But it's night and day. I would say on the other hand, on photography side, uh, it's really changed the game, right? So now if you have you used to have to go out and do all these on location shoots for whatever it is. You don't really need to do that anymore. You can take if you have an existing photo of somebody outside in a cafe or or in a, I don't know, some sort of retail location, you can now take that and say, okay, I need another angle of this through tools like Nano Banana or something like that, and it will take the same mood, same vibe of the picture, right, and just give you a different angle of that same building, just just through algorithms. It's amazing. So there's no use for an on location shoot anymore, in my opinion, unless you're doing a real business.
Right. So that's potentially an immense savings for companies, for brands, economically speaking, because photo shoots can be very expensive. So, assuming
Yep.
that you own all the rights to everything that's in the particular photograph that you're talking about, repositioning cameras, reposition or readjusting lighting, things like that, without having to be on site again, is something that your company's looking to leverage because it means not having to go back and reshoot, not having to go through the entire process of resources, people, timing, all this other stuff that comes into play when you're doing a live shoot. Interesting.
Well, correct, and also like through the AI, like it's just the simple things like if just the time savings. If you set a make a different image, right, and you get say you're if it's real, if it's a real photograph through your own photographers, usually you're getting reflections and all that stuff. Through AI, you're not getting that. You're not getting a reflection of a camera in a glass, or a reflection of a camera and people in a mirror that's like not even supposed to be part of the shot, not the focus of the shot. And it's little things like that that are going to save immense amounts of time.
Interesting. Right, right, right. So is this a skill set that like you see imaging specialists having to undertake as like a new skill set, being able to utilize this AI, or are you finding it more so kind of under the realm and under the hood of like creatives and designers who are taking those concepts, those images, and finding that finite difference between a good shot and an excellent and a great shot?
I think it's more of a collaboration than it ever has been. So right now, I think I think the photographer or the marketing, uh, whoever's asking for the marketing asset, has a vision of what they want. So they're working through maybe the photographer who might have taken an original shot and now needs to alter it, and then they need to work with a photographer, with a retoucher, to make that happen. So it's more of a collaboration of how to do that, and I think that's like through keywording, and there is a little back and forth, like when you we've all used AI, right? So like you could give some prompts, gives you three, it'll spit out three images, and two of them are junk. Like two of them just aren't what you wanted. So it's working with that photographer and that marketing person to try to figure out exactly which one is the ask, and then how to alter that through keywords, through prompting.
So, how do you go about finding the right AI to help you in those situations? Because we've all seen that not all AI is the same, not all of it quality wise. It's quite possible that quality wise, any particular AI maybe not be up to snuff based on your technical expertise, the eye that you've developed now, having manually done so for so long. You know what to look for. You know what you're trying to get. So, how do you come about finding the right AI for the solution you need?
Trial and error. I think, I mean, there's so many, and it's changing so fast. There are a few that seem to be pulling out of the fog, so to speak. Uh, I mean, I don't know if you want me to drop names, but I've already mentioned Nano Banana. Nano Banana has been super helpful for us. Plus, it's integrated with Photoshop, so for a limited time, it's integrated for free. So we're going to use that as much as we can. You know, there's just so much out there. We've used everything from Midjourney to Clade to others. It's really just what you want. We started with one just because it did a good job of removing backgrounds, and then being able to use AI to make new ones. because we didn't like either we didn't like the background or it was shot on white, and we wanted to do a whole post production process from like a JPEG and behind the scenes. Um, it just depends on the need and what, and also like if you can get to a place of like good enough, I think that's a really good thing too. I mean, obviously there's like this AI artifacting that you'll see in some of the image, the generative AI image makers, and it's what your company's okay with.
You bring up a good question, good enough. Like, what is good enough? Because I think, as with anything, you can match scale really quickly if your quality set pretty low, right? There's a potential for that, but by the same token, you don't want to necessarily, especially if the company that you're working with or working for is brand centric. There's going to be standards that are and expectations that are there. Do you see that the creatives, the imaging specialist is going to have a responsibility in the future to make sure that those standards are maintained, even though, especially when these assets are coming from some type of AI, either completely generative or some manipulation of some degree of the image manipulation that's happening? Um, there's still a place for humans to get their hands and opinions and eyes on something before it goes and is shepherded off to the next step in the workflow. Or do you think we're at this tipping point now where it's just trust the AI and let it fly?
Yeah, I don't think there's any trusting the AI and letting it fly. Not at least not at my company now. I think this is like kind of twofold. One, it's a company. I don't know, just the way the company feels about their assets, right? There's a whole Apple Amazon thing, right? So Apple is highly branded, and Amazon is basically everything else. What do you want your company to be? What's going to help you sell? And I think without actual data on how those assets are performing, you really never know. Um, Also, I think that training models has really helped us out here. So we've been able to train AI models on our brand assets. So you feed them 100 assets, and then you name that model, branded assets, and then whatever you spit out from that AI using that model now should be on brand. Still needs eyes on it because you need to know what's going on. But I think especially for really out front assets, I think you definitely need eyes on them. I mean, we could talk about the future of hyper personalization and then how that how AI is doing or not doing its job there. But um, but I think that's the key, is that being able to train models. I would also say that yeah, I think retouchers are probably the first line of defense there. Or actually, they're because they're taking in the assets, they're retouching them. They know what the guidelines are, so they should be able to tell whether the end assets that they're spitting out are on brand or not.
Interesting. Okay. So we touched kind of quickly on language models and training. So data becomes really kind of front and center to day to day work there, even ramping up an internal capability within company to leverage AI efficiently, effectively, right? So
Yep.
I assume you've already run into that and seen the benefit or the difference between running just like a generic AI over a trained AI, and how significantly those results differ.
Oh, sure. Like if you sure. So an example, I would say if you have our brand might be or your brand might be soft shadows. Like shadows are a big issue with AI. So so your brand might be soft shadows, and if you have a trained model that says all your assets are going to be soft shadows, then whatever you spit out should have soft shadows. But if you just pick any AI, and they don't know that, so it might be a 12 o'clock hard shadow, super dark, and yeah, training models is definitely the way to go.
Interesting. That I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good example. That's a really good example. From another part of the data discussion becomes, and you brought this up, metadata. So retouchers, designers, creatives, basically anybody who's not an analyst isn't really a big fan of entering metadata, right? So I know I never was, but metadata does become a sticking point. Have you seen AI either on the DAM side, on the standalone tool side? How have you seen AI make an impact on the workflows, the work that you've had your hands on?
Yeah, sure. I would say just the quick down and dirty AI, just looking at an image and telling you what's in there has been helpful. If you have a picture of a field of flowers with a blue sky and a windmill in the background, it's going to pick out all those things. It might add in other things that aren't in the picture, but at least you'll have those things, right? So that's huge. I mean, keywording is a kind of a pain. It's a pain point anyway. So where you run into problems is if you have product specific stuff, it's not going to tell you the size of anything. It's not going to tell you like actual attributes of the product that you're selling. But it will give you at least an overall, the overall color of the image. What is actually happening in it? Like it'll give you that, which has been great because it's keywording is kind of, again, that's a pain point.
Right. So I think it's a lot easier for AI to do, essential keywording, obvious stuff, right? The obvious things. And I think many dams at this point have kind of have that kind of baked in or caked into their entire process. But it gets back to data again, where if you wanted product centric information, and we've seen in the industry that some PIMs or CMS systems are now trying to do that, but that does go back to an entire setup or deliberate setup of integrating business product data with the AI so they can make it more intelligent. Is that something that the company you're working at, is that something that they've realized, recognized? Do they understand that?
I don't think
And
I don't. That's a full understanding. I mean,
sure.
we're trying to. So we're standing up a dam now, and we're looking into just APIs into our PIM and trying to figure out what that 1-to-1 ratio, what that 1-to-1 character is that we're going to call out product data to that asset. So we're just in that stage now.
It comes down to the ultimate importance of data relative to AI. When AI was first kind of proposed or brought up professionally in your career, when you've heard the term AI being proposed, has it been with any kind of focused kind of delivery in term or intent of being stood up and implemented, or has it been kind of like broad passes of this is going to solve X, Y, and Z, and it's going to be great?
Yeah, it's been broad. It's been super broad. I would say, um, yeah. Within my professional career, it's just always been super broad until the last 2 years, probably, where it's actually, it's now we're starting to gain traction on some things, especially in the post production world
So I
with
imagine at
photography.
this point, with all of your skills, all of your past experiences, you've helped kind of bring all this into like a finer focus so that you can identify these things that are being missed or need more attention, where you could I point the AI at more specifically in order to give you more value.
Yes, yeah, I would say that's the case.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, yeah.
So what do you think, if you could, what if you can identify your single greatest pain point in your current kind of production or workflow process? So your imaging process, thinking about your imaging workflow process, what do you think is like the greatest pain point? AI aside, but like what is the day to day, the greatest pain point in terms of process?
Quality control. I would say quality control is a big one. Like, just making on a few things. I was going to talk about the future, but a little bit. But I would say the biggest pain point is quality control because you need a person that if you're entering metadata on an asset, you need to make sure that that's right, and you need to make sure there's enough information there and also that there's not too much, right? Like somebody could write a book in keywords, and then you're pulling up. It doesn't make any sense. You're pulling up stuff you don't need to. Also, on the post-production side, QA has always been a problem. I think it's always been a bottleneck. You have to wait for somebody to look at those assets to make sure that all the work was done. Sure, you can build in a lot of trust, and there's a lot of training there, sure. But still, eyes on the final product is kind of necessary, I think.
Okay. And that probably saves an immense amount of time just in terms of like rework and communication back and forth in terms of workflows. What else do you think would be like the second most important value add relative to an AI implementation? What's that second most painful point of the day-to-day interaction with image specialist?
I would say that, well, I wouldn't just say for image specialists, but I would say the whole workflow. Like, I would definitely say adding metadata. Adding metadata is huge. I mean, it's pain, it's pain, it's pain. And it has to be done manually at some point, whether it's in the PIM or it's in some sort of spreadsheet before somebody gets it. It's still a manual process. And I'm having a hard time seeing a way out of that, to be honest.
Sure.
But if it's going to be done once, at least that should be able to trickle down through the whole workflow. And I don't think a lot of places are at that place yet.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've heard, we're trying to get there. That would be, that's definitely a North Star for us. I think that would be great, because then you're saving time, you're making assets more efficient, you're being able to, get more usability out of them, all that stuff.
Right. Interesting. So I would think that some people listening in might think from an imaging standpoint, from a product imaging standpoint, maybe silhouetting would be like a big win, like a huge win. So are you of the mindset of like, silhouetting or dropping out things or adding shadows? Are those like nice to haves or nice like bells and whistles? They're great, but really what I'm hearing is that this data centric stuff is really has more weight and more importance relative to the entire workflow process because it's so important to the company and to the brand. So where do those things lie? This what everybody's seeing, right? The background removals and the silhouettings and the colorization stuff. Is that stuff nice, or is that stuff kind of a what? It's probably a need to have at this point.
I, I think it's a need to have. I think, I've already, like, for the retouching part of it, it's, AI has been massive. You can't get away from it. You could just add in when you can add in keywords to say, change all these colors to whatever color you want, just by adding in some text, that's amazing, right? Or if you crop and like, now I need my video here to be 2/3 more to one side, then, and you can just do that, and it will just add it, and it has no idea what's going on in the background, but it usually does it pretty good. That's pretty massive. The reason I focus on the data part is because I think it's really important for the whole workflow to understand the value of the assets they're creating. So, like, if you're going to spend time retouching or taking a photo or marketing an asset, you need to know that that's going to perform. And the only way you can do that is having metadata behind it and figuring out, you know, you you want to measure clicks, you want to measure how many uses that particular asset has. If we take one picture of a, let's say, of a water bottle, right? And we shoot it on white with a shadow, and we want to mix up all the backgrounds on that. We want to say maybe one works better than the other. The only way you're going to do that is through data.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is we maybe past that tipping point of where AI, as it relates to kind of imaging and image manipulation, we may be at past that tipping point of whether or not it's a nice to have versus it's a must have.
Yeah, I think it's a must-have. I think it's a must-have as far as marketing assets go as a whole.
Circling back to something I mentioned earlier, how do you see this affecting the skill set now that we've crossed this threshold, this tipping point, how does this affect the skill set of someone who's trained for years now as an imaging specialist to better understand the market that they're working in now, the market that is thriving and exploding now with massive amounts of data coming into these very capable AI systems? What do you think bringing on an imaging specialist today or tomorrow would mean for you as a manager, for you as a trainer, as they come into the workplace and now their understanding of image editing and manipulation and composition, all of these things that they've been learning about have slightly changed. So what would you say is something that they need to complement or learn in order to complement kind of in their role?
I mean, the obvious here is prompting. They need to know. They need to know how to prompt, and usually that just comes with experience. I think if you're using these tools, prompting kind of gets easier and easier because you get to reiterate like so often. You get to fail at it and then pivot and then fail and then pivot and then succeed at it so rapidly that you can get really proficient pretty fast, I think. So, but I think that's a skill set that actually needs that we need. Um, Also, I mean, there's like, we a little bit of familiarity with like the back end of AI stuff. I mean, there's tools like Comfy UI and stuff that you can build your own. You're building your own models. If you have experience with that, that's super helpful. Depending on what you want to do with the assets, really.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Let me hit you with some rapid fires, kind of just out of curiosity. What's the biggest overpromise you've heard from AI that just hasn't delivered?
I would say, I mean, I'm not sure if it was overpromised to me, but I kind of that it was going to be able to take over for photography and retouching. I kind of got that vibe from the beginning, and there are things that just it can never do. We what we do is we at Vistaprint, we sell products, and we sell not just products, but the content that goes on those products. So depending on the product, it has a decoration area that has to be defined. And the way that's defined is through the retoucher. They know where that is. They know the measurements in where, like, where this might go, you know, or here. They know that. So they're making that decoration area smart, so other people can then swap out content, right? Um, AI is not going to do that. It's not going to read the decoration area. I mean, we're playing with ways to maybe do that, but we haven't come up with a great way to do that yet.
So stands to reason that there's probably going to be some business specific or business centric kind of knowledge or skill that needs to be attributed to a specific role like that because they're not all the same.
Sure.
So
Sure.
the requirements you're describing seem to be very technical. That's obviously something that your creative professionals during our onboarding would have to pick up. And by extension, if you ever wanted AI to do that, I don't think there's any canned AI, I'm sure you've looked, that's going to automatically go ahead and take that on and do that effectively or efficiently. If I'm hearing
Correct.
that right.
Yes. Also, from the photography standpoint, if you sell a product, AI is not going to make it for you. I mean, they might be able to make a, a pizza box, right? I don't know why that jumped into my head, but a pizza box, but it's not. But it might not be the right size. It might not look the right size. It might not be made with the same material. It might not. It's just not going to make it the way your product should be represented, and it should represent whatever your customer gets. You have to be hyper cognizant of that. For any product, anything you sell, AI is not going to make it for you.
Cool. So, what would you say to someone who's feeling like it could be a creative, could be an imaging specialist? What do you say to someone uh, potentially on your team who's feeling overwhelmed by this tipping point thing. This whole thing that AI seemingly has arrived. It's here. It's not going away. What do you say to somebody who's just completely overwhelmed by the sense of it all?
It's definitely happened. Um, Focus on one thing. It's interesting. It's like you're being bombarded by AI stuff with a fire hose. There's just so much. There's all these tools that are coming out. They promise they can do X, Y, and Z, and maybe they can, maybe they can't. But you just don't know where to focus. So I have my team, especially my retouching team. They're focusing on what Photoshop can do, what can Photoshop actually do, and then focus on that. Then also, for beyond that, they're focusing on what the marketing ask is. So like, do, what are the trends, right? Are they getting a lot of in situation shots? And if they are, like, what do those look like? Understand what those look like so you can understand what you're outputting.
So a lot of that has to do with kind of brand centric or campaign centric kind of content, right? So it's kind of learning not only the skill but learning the business requirements, going back to the brief more than likely, right?
Yes.
Um, and I don't know if the AIs that you've been testing have been fed briefs, but I'd imagine that probably could become a very powerful thing in order to kind of get you closer to a better finished product, right? Um, Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, I
You're
can say we haven't fed them briefs yet, and that would be a very powerful tool.
So, what is at this point a critical skill for someone that was looking to join your team as kind of a new imaging specialist, a new creative designer? What's one of the key skills that you're looking for um, as it relates to all of this technology that's landing on their plate now? I'd imagine that you still have to look at a portfolio, but now there's a big old asterisk next to that has to do with all this technology that's in play. So what is a skill, a critical skill or two that you're looking for in one of these associates that you'd be considering?
I think there's a couple of things to say here. I would say adaptability is probably the main one. Being able to, yeah, just be able to, you know, pick and choose, like, what you need to focus on to get the job done. I would say, there's just, like I said before, there's so much coming at you, so you need to be able to switch, because the company might decide, you know, we want to use this tool, and it's not one that you've been testing, it's not one that you've even tested yet, but now you have a tool that you have to use, and you got to be able to figure it out. So I mean, I would say, I would have said that anyways. I would have said that beyond AI, but I would say adaptability is like paramount now. um, I would also say that having some, you still need all the other skills. I think you still need an eye for what the output is. Like, you still need an eye for shading. It's like you're kind of typical artistic skills for a retoucher, but you need eye for shading and color, and definitely an eye for detail, like, of if there's anything else going on in the image, like flyaway hairs, dust, whatever. Now AI can get rid of most of that, but you need to be able to see it to know it's there. So, but if the image is being created from AI, they're usually not there. So there's a weight there. I would say the future of resourcing for, maybe not retouch, not maybe not our retouching, because we have that product centric
Mm.
feel. But I would say, in within resourcing, there's definitely a trend for visionaries more than there are doers overall. With my retouching team being the exception there, because a lot of tasks can be done by AI. And, I think we'll get there soon. I don't think that's the case for a lot of functions now, but I think we'll get there. And I think being able to see the future of where either what the company needs, or where your position is going, or what the function does, like, I think being able to see where that's going is going to be key.
Interesting. So Santa Cruz Software recently did a survey online, and one of the things that came up as a big deal was localization, not translation, localization. Interestingly, about 90% of the respondents actually said that they localize between 2 to 5 languages. Knowing that you're working in an international company, roughly how many languages is your team kind of engaged with on the day to day as it relates to these, like your image assets or your image workflows?
13 to 14, I believe.
Okay. And is your retouching team also global in terms of where these team members are? Are they global creatives, global imaging specialists?
Yes, we have some in the US and some in Tunisia.
Awesome. So the advice is the same. I would take it then for any one of those artists. You find some of the designers or some of the artists to be a little bit more open to it. Are they more accepting in different regions, or are they at a different place in their AI journey?
I think everybody's at a different place in their AI journey, but overall, I would say that everybody has been, at least within the retouching world, has been really accepting. Like, because it just makes their job so much easier. It's, when you don't have to, when you're not spending hours just cloning out things, it just opens you up for so many other things. So, we're they get to test other AI tools and see how those go. So it's great. It's really great.
So from the international team's perspective, that tipping point's also been met there. Beyond
Correct.
it, looking at it, well past it. What do you think?
I think well past it. I think they know, as far as generative AI and imaging goes, I think they're well past it at this point. I think that was maybe a 2 year ago thing where it was like, oh, it's going to take our jobs and all this stuff, and now it's a must have. They definitely need it. They see that that there's security other places, and they definitely can branch out. It's great. It's been good.
All right. So what I'm hearing is AI is a must-have. Tipping points in the rear view. It's a tool. It needs humans,
Yep.
and there we have it.
Yeah, definitely needs eyes for sure. Yeah.
Joe, this has been great. I appreciate your time. Yeah, so we'll end there.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Lewis.
Awesome.
Love
Thanks.
talking to you.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. Thanks
All
for
right.
participating. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.